Oh.
Every other, I mean, there's 3 in a row. Every other row.
Oh, you don't want to do that one. That's not gonna work.
That's my
seat.
Over way over the corner. All right. Go in. This is pretty good. I had fins last night. Flexing tonight. They really are going to be able to retire. Because the radar runs fins, right? I'm going to move that.
Good eye. Can't let you see your own
Jeez,
video.
I gotta get this down before that.
Yes.
Which one are you trying to print?
Yes.
So did you see my updated one?
Yes.
That's all it was.
It's so simple.
Try to see.
I don't know why.
Try to see if we can install the library one. Or, yes, we're gonna do the best one from here.
Freshmen. And it's upperclassmen remote. And it's
Jeff, thanks for being here.
underclassmen in the
Did he, Josh talk to you about the chat?
Oh, yeah, it's off already. Well, I meant to.
No, you're all, you're good, you're good.
Right, so there's no conflicts ever.
Hey, Roger. How are you? Good.
Trying to see what's open here.
Well, I think there's a middle one. If there's, if you want, there's a middle one.
Sure,
That's
there's a
okay.
middle one. Okay, good.
Right into the fire, right?
Right.
I need to take.
Good.
Good.
Also was crafting about whether you reduce within the class and so then you also just filled an email and shared it.
You want to email it to me and I'll look for it?
About what.
I'm not preaching
If you send it to me,
Growing.
I'll go up there.
They're getting big.
Which means they're all hearing you.
Yeah, Jessica Bass.
Yeah.
And Ron Red.
So,
If you want,
If you don't want
do you want to vote tonight?
Sure.
Do you want to vote tonight?
Yeah.
Do you want to vote tonight?
Do you want to vote tonight?
I don't, whatever, I don't care.
You gonna eat anything?
Hello.
How you been, no, that's fine, it's hanging in there.
All right.
She did.
Yeah, we did.
You know, thank you for sitting in the same spot.
Thank you, no, this is mine, for
I'll
sure.
give you up there.
Yeah.
Maybe just getting anyways.
People use the CIS, email the board chair, email the last one here, and that way they read at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So we actually had a great time with Mrs. Family today, and I'm feeling that much more better about it, and there's so much more resilient than we are. But there's 6 girls in juniors. That's it.
Oh, geez.
Yeah. They'll be true gentlemen by the end of the year. Or we won't like girls at all.
Yeah, we're going on the other, right?
I know.
Right?
I know. Now it's happening.
Let's see if I want every other row.
I can't.
Oh, it's put up.
You can just not use it.
Not from that.
Hello.
You guys good? Okay.
Well, that's. And I don't know. You want the microphone? So, I mean, actually, a little bit. But, yeah, I want to. Oh, there, that's good. Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm not there. Oh, yeah. I started. Oh, there, that's good. So, I feel so low. Oh, wait, right here. It doesn't have tape on it. And there's lemon or just want to do that. Sorry. I was on the catalyst there, and I was on the academic side, so I feel like it was that. We're doing the same thing.
Well, we're not going in order, we're going with favorites. So we're walking fast out one right now. And we
Yeah. But that wasn't what we were like. I could just like, that's like, well,
I know we watched it with us.
yeah, we did that. It's like,
Oh, I wanted to be next to you, but there's
that was
yellow
like,
tape.
Okay.
Yes, there's a yellow tape.
I'm a teaching principal, so we're on Swan Island. I teach third grade and ninth grade as well.
Yes, she's supposed to.
I watched
So,
not right now. Summer,
I don't know.
I'm afraid everywhere.
Oh my God. I think you're they said, I didn't see the final recommendations because they're not that good. Like, when I came in. So they're. And then you just have to.
Jim, good to see you.
Blame it on you. New girl.
Yeah. Yes, that's right.
Boys outside.
Better wait for mom to pick them up.
Just
She's gonna be here at 5:30. Yeah, I'm not taking them home. I don't know what that could be. Yeah.
She's right there. Did you hear back from Rhonda about your question?
Yes, I do.
You're gonna say something tonight about it.
It's 18 tomorrow. I thought that was elementary principal.
Oh, no, you're right. It was very complicated.
I'm Marie, I don't know. Everybody's in the same city. It's so far away.
It says 18.
Jennifer, what? What?
Oh, okay, that's the way that works.
Way down here. I thought that was the one. I had the one.
Oh, it's Christie, it's okay, it's Christie. I didn't get a chance to get out there, I just thought that was good. Was that just a store here? Yeah, they said appetizer and then
I didn't even realize.
I didn't understand.
No, I figured it wasn't.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, hello, everybody. Can you guys hear me? Oh, I don't have to hold this up. I am calling the meeting to order at 5:33. I haven't seen a voucher go around, but that's okay. Well, there was one last week, I guess, right? A voucher?
I'm not sure when she had it going around.
Okay.
I can check on it.
Okay, I want to make sure that I'm not missing anything or forgetting. So then we have the approval of the minutes for July 13, 2020.
Second.
So I think that was Jennifer and Todd.
Sure.
Did you want it, Heidi?
No.
Any comments, questions, edits? Hearing none, seeing, oh, I didn't do the attendance. Can we hold on our motion for a few minutes? I need to do the attendance, you guys, I'm really sorry. I need to confirm the board members that are here. So, starting at the top, Heather Jones here, Todd Graham.
Here.
Teresa King LeClaire. Is here on Zoom. Susan McCready.
Here.
Kate Chaplin.
Yeah, you're shut up.
I know, that's right. Nope.
Yeah.
All right, yeah. Dwayne Bolt.
Here.
Robin Sue Tapley.
Here.
Marie Yarborough.
Here.
Lily Simmons.
Here.
Christy LaSquadro.
Here.
John Bench.
Here.
Susan Allen. John Eisenhower.
Here.
Ingrid Kashmar.
Here.
Jim Sawyer.
Here.
Heidi Lawson.
Here.
Jessica Stewart.
Here.
Jessica Bass.
Here.
Carrie Hayes. Roger Sanamon.
Here.
Jennifer Vanilla.
Here.
Gary Burr.
Here.
Tom Reed. Tom's on Zoom. Darcy Throckmorton. Aaron Brown.
Here.
Tammy Tripler. Oh, there she's on Zoom. Oh, there we are. Back again. And I think that's it. Amy Palmer, I see you from Cranberry Isles on Zoom too. Right. You have that, Selena? Okay. Okay, so going back to our motion, hearing no comments or edits. All those in favor, and I will, do you want me to read through? Or since it's in person? Oh, it's. Okay, all those in favor, say aye. Those opposed, nay? Cool, that was quick. Next, we have public comments. And I want to just say into the record that we all have received a lot of letters, great letters from public, parents, staff, teachers, and those have been shared with us via a document. Thank you, Selena, for assembling those and continually adding to it. We did ask everybody to read that because it is really important to read those and to get a sense of what's being said, what people are feeling and thinking. And I know there's a lot of people who have read them, and I hope everybody has done that. Because we are now back in in-person regular meetings, we're not going to be reading those into the public comment section. They are attached to it, and they will be attached to the minutes of the meeting so that they are a part of the record. So that being said, I know we do have some members of the public. If there is any public comment, I will take it. I think raise your hand if you have anything. And then do you want to vote?
Well, they should come to.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Just
Susan, come on down to the mic and.
state their name and,
Yep,
and
please
just
state.
their community they live in, please.
So state your name and your town, please.
My glasses will stay off.
Hopefully don't fall off.
Or frog up.
Yeah.
Sue Stanley, Bar Harbor, and my daughter Emma Stanley is supposed to be a senior this year. And my biggest concerns are that will delay the beginning of school, which I don't have that big of a problem with, actually. But what I'm most concerned with and my child is that this is going to be an ongoing thing. And we'll delay it till October, and then we're going to do it again. And, it's likely that she may miss out on her varsity volleyball this year. And to me, where I grew up, we had high schools that had 4,000 kids and 2 campuses. I mean, I really think we can do this here. I think we're setting a terrible precedent for our children, my children, and many people who I know. Our children have been working all summer. My 2 kids work at Ben & Bill's with hundreds of people going through there every night. And if they can do that, and they've proven they're responsible enough and capable of wearing a mask and taking care of themselves, I think that we should do the same, and get this going. And I'm very concerned that we don't have a plan in place. And we're all working very hard in the tourist industry, at least everyone I know. I don't know what all of you are doing, but my big circles are, I've always worked in tourism for 30 years here. I drive around a van full of 5 people every day for 5 to 6 hours. I sterilize it afterwards. I do tours. I had a store here for 10 years. And people would say to me, how come you're never sick? We've never seen you sick. And I would say, because I can't get sick. I have to work. And that's what I've instilled in my children. And I just want to make sure that we have a plan. At this point, we should be going, the teachers are going to circulate, or there's got to be, we need to set it in stone and attack it and say, this is what we're going to do. And I'm kind of astonished that we're still at this point, but I know many places are. So I guess those are my 2 biggest concerns is let's get a plan and let's implement it and let's stick to it. And I do think that there should be remote learning. And I do think that there should be in-person learning because I don't want somebody to send their child to school if they're afraid. We're not afraid, but we understand that people are. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there any other public comment?
I follow suit with Sue.
You did it, Sue?
I couldn't agree more.
All right. Yes. Erica, if you want to come up, come up and say something. And state your name and your town too, please.
Eric Jeffers, Bar Harbor. I couldn't agree more with what Sue said. Everything is right on key. I don't want to waste anybody's time, so ditto.
I believe so.
Okay, thank you guys very much for being here and for sharing your comments and thoughts with us. And Mark, I'm gonna turn it over to reports. And
No, I'm doing just this recommendation.
so before I turn it over to Mark, I just wanted to let everybody know that he and I have been talking, as everybody has been. And after our workshop, we were left there with 4 options and what was today going to look like and how is it going to be the most efficient and the most effective use of our time, with the end goal of coming out with action. And Mark has been working on this all weekend and then some, and he has a recommendation. And I felt that that was going to be the most efficient and useful way for us to proceed. So that's what Mark is going to present to all of us now. And my hope after that is that we'll hear from the different principals and thoughts and feedback from them. And then we'll have obviously the opportunity to ask our questions too. Okay.
Thank you, Heather. Thanks. Sorry, I know you're not supposed to do that. No. I apologize, Chuck. Thank you, Heather. Good evening, everyone. This may be a bit of a challenge for me with a mask and trying to see some of my notes, but I'll work through it. I'm going to dispense or try to dispense with a lot of words. I told Heather it was important I was succinct and I was brief. Bear with me, I want to provide just a little background and a little context. Since March 13th, our students, our staff, our schools, and our communities have battled COVID-19 in ways in which we could never imagine. From the onset, no one could have predicted the unprecedented impact and toll this pandemic has taken upon our community, our state, our nation, our planet, and our lives. Though the time is challenging, I'd like to acknowledge the kindness, the compassion, the stewardship, the voice, and the strength I've witnessed in others around me. And I know that these attributes will keep us strong and carry us forward in the days and weeks and months to come. Over the course of the summer, and most recently following the board's workshop of last Thursday, I've been privileged to receive, to read, and reflect upon multiple emails, communications, feedback, questions, concerns, and suggestions. Recognizing the diversity of perspective has been of value, and it highlights the need for further dialogue and collaboration. No matter where we stand on the issue of the safe return to schools, I find these as the facts. First, any decision must be made in the best interest of our students, physically, socially, and emotionally. That's why all of us are here, no matter where we stand. Teaching and learning must begin as per the approved calendar that the board sets. And it will begin with a caveat. We need adequate time to provide training, support, and ensure resources are in place for all staff in all schools before reintroducing students unconditionally to our schools. We also need time to evaluate who we are. We know as an island, this is a very special place in our state. It's also a very special place in our nation, and for that matter, our planet. We're a microcosm of the world right now with all of our visitors and friends. That's not a bad thing, but we need to recognize that. Many people have coded us as green. Green means go. I don't know if we're green, yellow, or whatever combination of those two colors makes. I'm not sure of that. And we can't get this wrong. We've got to get it right. We need to establish and implement an asymptomatic voluntary testing program for our staff. And I am incredibly proud of the fact, unless I'm wrong, as of Friday, there is no other school system in the state that is even considering or even close to being able to do that. It's not because of the administrators, it's not because of me, it's because our community has supported us and is stepping up with the resources to support asymptomatic testing for our staff. And that's a blessing, but we need time to implement it and make sure we get it right and have it aligned with the Down East COVID-19 task force testing program that is in place right now in our community with 39 businesses, the Acadia National Park, and several other entities. And that testing program will be supported through the Jackson Laboratory and under the direction of the Desert Island Hospital. We need to adequately conduct evaluation and testing of all of our schools. We should be doing that every year on a regular basis without the pandemic, but now more than ever, that's very important. That includes monitoring air quality, water quality, filtration systems, and related systems. And we need to understand the impact of that when we start to repopulate our schools. We need to do that in concert with our head custodians and our maintenance people and the many vendors that we have in our community that monitor these contracts. But over the weekend, I've been doing some work and I've identified an individual that can begin coming in and doing independent assessment of those systems in concert with our staff and with those other entities to be able to deliver recommendations and make sure that our systems are functioning at max capacity. Where we can improve them, we can consider and should, and also identify through those testing results so that we can release those to staff, parents, and the community. And we're not at that place where we've even begun to do that. And I'm not sure many schools have. With the individual I talked to over the weekend, everybody is competing for the same limited resources in our entire state. We need to collaborate with building administration and support building-based teams. The power and capacity of anything we do with repopulating our schools will be born through our building-based teams. They know our buildings, they know our children, they know our staff, they know our capacity. These teams, which the principals have been working day and night to establish, are made up of nurses, custodians, counselors, teachers, educational technicians. Those are the people that we need to listen to, and those are the people that we need to provide the resources to support them to safely bring our students back to school. We must reconnect with families to identify and provide social emotional supports for our students. Now more than ever, the competing interest of coming back to school safely and the mental health needs for our children, our staff, and our community are ever present. And we have to weigh that and be prepared to deliver the resources that we've been able to put into place this summer to have capacity and support our students, no matter what our platform is. It's essential, absolutely essential. We provide expanded human resource guidance for our staff to assist in navigating individual, family, and personnel issues to ensure timely guidance and access to any and all resources for our employees. They deserve that. And we don't have an opportunity not to get this right. We have to get this right. And time is not our friend, and we need help in making sure that we can respond to each and every individual in a timely basis and support them to the best of our abilities. Given these facts, as your superintendent, I don't have a silver bullet for you. I don't have an alteration of the plan. I wouldn't do that to you. But I feel a responsibility. You hired me to come in and do a job. I've tried to listen all summer, and I've tried to listen since March 13th. And I will continue to listen. But now it's time for me to lead. And I'll take full responsibility for the recommendation that I'm about to give to the board for consideration. I recommend that the school committee and the board endorse and support option 1. Option 1 is as follows. Begin teaching and learning at all MDI RSS AOS 91 member schools on Tuesday, September the 8th. That caveat is with the board approving the calendar change. Through Friday, the 25th, remotely. We will evaluate the status of where we're at on the 21st of September and know whether or not we need to continue that. But the hope would be at that point in time that we have done the following. Let me back up. The caveat, will be in assessing whether or not we'll return to repopulate our school with the following conditions. Making sure we work with Maine CDC, MDI Hospital, Jackson Laboratory, and local health and medical professional experts to review the data on an ongoing basis to ensure that we have no community spread and we can repopulate our schools safely. You heard Ian Braun say at the workshop, we are razor thin. We have staff and staff are ready to come back and step up to the plate, but we don't have redundancies and we don't have all kinds of backup. We have to do this right. Staff, on September the 8th, if the board approves that, all staff will provide instruction and work in buildings through the remote period. Why? For continuity, for access to technology and infrastructure, and making sure that the internet and all those capabilities are consistent for all of our staff and all of our students. So they can have access to the teaching and learning resources provided by our communities. So we can ensure adequate training and support. And we can ensure they have access to supplies and resources. And let me go back for a second to the HR support. I feel due diligence to Nancy, the business office. That's not a slight to Nancy and our business office staff. They do an incredible and remarkable job. But as this community knows, budgets, human resources, and all the other things that Nancy and those people provide, right now, more than ever, we need that additional support. So I wanted to make sure people, and especially you, Nancy, you and your team know, that's not a reflection on the fact that you're not doing a good job. You guys are doing a great job. Our schools, that's a big ask to say start remote. And we need to make sure that we fill some gaps. We have a responsibility as schools to partner with community agencies that we've partnered with in the past and may not exist yet. We have to develop relationships so that we can work with community partners to identify and implement support for working parents and families to ensure resources are in place to support this transitional period. We understand that people need to work, and we understand that the community needs to be supported. And if this plan is going to move forward with capacity, we need to partner and do that work and put those resources and support in place. This recommendation isn't made lightly. Sue, and I'm sorry, the other parent that came forward, thank you for taking the time and just giving your voice this evening, along with all the other people. Whether you're a teacher, a parent, a student, a board member, we are all members of a community. And this is the time now more than ever for us to come together. I recognize as I read those comments and those letters, people are on different ends of the spectrum. And I see, not my job, but a responsibility to bring people together. And we can do this work. We need time. And I'm not asking for a blank check, and I'm not asking for an open-ended period, because I know the community can't support or accept that. But we need time to assess and implement resources, conduct training with fidelity, assess the impact of our visitors and travel, and ensure we are meeting the expectations to our students, staff, and communities with fidelity and consistency. If we do not do those things, and we don't do them with consistency and follow through, if we do those things and we do them with consistency and fidelity, then we should plan for the safe return to our schools. I'd just like to close by saying that the time for us to come together has arrived. We cannot move forward divided. We need to continue to listen. We need to continue to collaborate, educate, innovate, adapt, and overcome. That's what we've always done here on MDI, whether it's academically, through teaching and learning, through extracurricular activities. We've always set the standard throughout the state, and I'm very proud to be a part of that. I'm confident we can do this work safely, and we can get our kids back in the buildings, and we can get our staff back together, but we need to do it collectively and collaboratively, not divided. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. School board members, I think maybe before I turn it over to hearing from principals, do you all have some questions that you want to ask of Mark at this time? I have Robin, Sue, and then Christy. Oh, yeah, you know what, will you come on down? Yeah, sorry.
I just want to say thanks, Mark. I appreciate all the hard work. I want to support everything that you say. My question is, maybe a couple different questions. We've had 5 months. What is another 7 weeks going to give us? And in that 7 weeks, when we're still at the same point, where do we go from there? I honestly don't want to give us more time. My other question is, if we go remote only, are we going to ask staff to be in their classrooms teaching?
Mark, do you want to use this one? Yeah, do you want to use that one?
I'll answer the second question first, and I'm not doing this in a vacuum. I'll answer the second question first, and I'm not doing this in a vacuum. So again, I want my colleagues to speak freely if I don't speak accurately. The answer is yes, Robin Sue. Our expectation will be that staff will report back to their buildings and conduct teaching and learning in the buildings. The caveat I want to give to that is that we do have some individuals that have come forward with some medically documented conditions. We need to work with human resource experts to make sure we navigate that safely and consistently. And we will evaluate those on a case-by-case basis with individuals. It will not be a blanket, but a blanket statement. But people will be expected to be here for the reasons that I indicated, for consistency and continuity. The other piece that you mentioned was we've had 5 months. Yes, that weighs on me heavily. And I'm not going to stand behind the fact that information changes. It does. The simple fact of the matter is, as much as the people, many of us, including our teachers and our staff, have been working since March, the fact of the matter is, a lot of us, because of the break over the summer, we haven't had the resources, the continuity to be able to meet with all of those teams. It's not an excuse, it's just a fact. I'm not pointing fingers. I'm just stating the obvious that if when we shut down in March and we continued to employ people and move forward, we were all under the thought, the hope, the realization that we'd return in the spring. That didn't happen. And now here we are. I know standing up here and making this presentation and this recommendation is huge, but at the end of the day, I can't with good conscience make another recommendation knowing what I know, and these are the facts. It's not about delay. I cannot guarantee and look everybody in the eye and tell you that all the PPE equipment is in our buildings and it's in place. Will it be? I sure as heck hope so, but I can't say that. I cannot guarantee that we've conducted all the evaluations of all the systems in our building to be able to look teachers in the eye and parents and students and say, yeah, we're okay. I don't have those answers. Now, The next piece you might want to say is, well, Mark, why didn't you do that back then? Or why didn't you do that 3 or 4 months ago? Guilty as charged. Doing the best we can, working on it. I'm not trying to make any excuses, but that's what I got for you, Robinson.
Okay, I'll put you on. Wait, Chris, hold on a second. I also wanted to just go to Robin Sue, your first question about what's another 7 weeks. Should we approve something tonight? Should we approve this recommendation? I think it's going to be on the responsibility of the local boards to really work hard and work with their building principals to make sure that we're not kicking it down the road another 2 weeks or 4 weeks, provided nothing changes with the virus.
Heather, can I add one thing to that, please?
Sure.
And it is a quick thing. I'd be remiss if I didn't tell you that our buildings are in different places, and we're not gonna hold people back. Individual schools, community boards that might be ready to move forward. And that's an important distinction and caveat that I need to put in place. Yes, we're trying to hold hands and all go down this road together. That's important. But at the same time, why would we hold somebody back if a building was ready, if a staff were ready, if a community were ready? And I want to make sure folks know we're working towards that end. And that's why these building-based teams are important. Folks know the diversity of our district when you look at some of our outer islands as compared to some of our most densely populated schools.
Go ahead. So if Pennatic is ready on the 15th, I have no idea what that is, to go back for in-school instruction, they can do that prior to the 28th? I mean, I'm just trying to understand what you just said.
There's going to be a caveat to that answer, Ingrid, and that's providing all the things I said are in place. PPE, training, all of those boxes need to be checked. And it's not, we'll get back to you, we'll check. That's a tall order for every school and every principal, and they're going to need a lot of support, and those teams are. So I would be a fool to say no, but we got a heck of a lot of work to do to say yes to that question.
I have other comments when we get to discussion, but I just wanted to ask a couple of questions about your plan. Number one, when you say teachers in the building, you mean teachers, and you're also suggesting our full support staff return to the buildings as well, correct?
I could not with good conscience recommend a plan that didn't include all of our staff and all of our employees. They need training, and if we do go down this road, we have to ensure supports are still in place for our families and our kids. Food service and other logistical things that our drivers and our support staff can continue to do. But the answer to that is, Christy, absolutely. Because if those people aren't here, we can't pay them.
Right.
And I can't with good conscience support that. I can't support not having them here and not having them employed and receive their benefits if they're providing a service and they're getting training.
My other, I don't know if this is a comment or a question about, I feel, and this is just my opinion, that teachers can be in the building doing remote learning. My children had a hard time, with the, I know remote learning is going to change, but with the setup that we had. And I'm envisioning teachers in their classrooms with their whiteboards, with their overhead projectors, on their cameras, alone in their classroom with their mask off, teaching their class as if the class were live. And personally, I think that's a much better solution than my kids sitting in a classroom with everybody masked up. So I totally support that remote decision. But in reading all of the teacher letters, I mean, there's a real high degree of fear about coming back into these buildings. And I guess what I'd like to see between now and September 8th is a protocol for how the teachers are going to get back into the building, for how we're going to operate during the day, and maybe even an invitation to walk through the buildings with the principals and ask questions to try to to work through some of the fears and anxiety that they're having, because I think we can do it. And I think there's a way, but I feel like right now, when you said that, I think a lot of those teachers out there immediately had anxiety. And so I just hope that we can focus on their comfort level and coming back into these buildings to begin remote learning.
Thanks, Christine. And Susan?
I actually probably got to feed, can you hear me okay? I'm probably going to feed off a little bit what you said and also what you said, Heather, because my question was really related to if we're going to extend it 7 weeks, then how do we ensure that accountability wise that that's going to just be 7 weeks and not further? And I know you have some unanswered questions. And then the other question was the checklist. I hear you say checklist and for Christy, right? Planning. Do we actually have a checklist of all the components that we need to meet? And if so, can we have access to that and maybe explore that just so that we can help on our end, help encourage to see what we can do to help get it, rolling.
So I want to make sure that my colleagues speak up too. I don't need to provide all the answers and do all the dialogue. I'm happy to respond though. And Ian, this has been an area you've worked on, but the bottom line is the answer to that question, Sue, is yes. We've held off on releasing things because we want to make sure that the work we're doing has capacity and it's going to add value to what we're doing. So I worked all weekend. I know Ian did and others. We've been working on these handbooks and we're making good progress. I'd say, Ian, 70% I did, with there, but we're not going to release anything that's not complete and not consistent with the plan we're going with. So I'm not trying to string this along, but I would rather make sure that we have a decision and we have focus and then we move forward in that capacity. And the other piece to that, Susan, is I'm relying on a lot of information from a lot of other school departments, a lot of experts, but I believe that these people that we're going to bring in to do our facilities assessments are going to be able to provide us a lot of pieces too. And the last piece I'll close with is that one of the most important components when I talked about training is working with John Fitzpatrick and the Dwayne Bolts and the MBI Hospital and all these people that have been doing this for several months so that we can learn from them and train our staff in those protocols. And again, Robin Sue's right. Why hasn't this been done? No excuses. We've been off for the summer with the exception of a small skeletal crew of year-round staff. Ian?
Yeah, just to elaborate more on Mark's comment there. So we have been developing checklists. The MDI task force that was made up of community members, parents, students, teachers, a whole bunch of people have been putting together plans, developing plans. We've been pulling things from the CDC, from the MDOE, and putting those together to develop guidelines. We release those to the principals and the building-based teams. They're building those as well. Quite frankly, our guidance from the federal and state government has been simply that, very vague guidelines. And you start drilling into the details about, we need this, and we need this, and we need this, and it's just like a little thread you keep undoing there. And so that has been challenging, and we continue to work at it. We have pulled some, again, with those guidelines and with the old things the task force developed, some handbooks from various places, so we're kind of pulling that together just to put all those together and say, hey, well, this is a good part, this is a good part, this is what we developed ourselves, along again with those MDOE guidelines and CDC. So we have a lot of things in place, and it seems like it's coming together more and more each day. But there are some things like ventilation and getting those things checked up that are very, very important that we need to do to know where we really are at. And we're waiting, like Mark says, on those PPE orders. I know independently we've ordered some things, but the big bulk orders need to come in from the MDOE, and we're waiting on it.
Jessica, and then Lily.
Am I up next? Like, it's
You
my
are
turn?
up next, calm down.
All right.
You are the next contestant.
I should have sat closer. This is gonna happen a lot. Is this one on?
Yes, it is.
So upon reading all those letters from teachers, my concern is what kind of team building skills are we doing or morale boosting? Because it seems like a lot of our teachers don't want to be back in the classroom. And if our students or children are feeling that, they're not gonna want to be there either. So what are we doing to address that concern that the teachers are telling us that they're concerned about?
I'll take a stab at that one, but I'd welcome some support from my colleagues. But I think, what I said is I'll take a stab at that, but I'd like my colleagues to feed in. That's an important piece, and I'm going to say this carefully and respectfully. I'm not a social media guy, but I see its value as a communication tool. But I want to really emphasize feelings versus facts, and I mean that in a positive way. Feelings are important, but we also have to evaluate facts. And in doing that, our administrators need time with their colleagues in buildings safely, just like we're doing now, using PPE, using physical distancing, to be able, if you will, to reacclimate them into the buildings to make sure they understand that we're not bringing people into an unsafe situation. We can't do that, we would not do that. But that takes time for people to adjust. Adults need that. I mentioned social emotional supports for kids. Adults need social emotional supports as well. And that's something that we have to build. This has been an incredibly difficult time for everyone. We need to recognize that. And I will just say, I know with Julie and Melissa and the administrative team, it's constantly a topic that we talk about in terms of recognizing the social emotional piece for not just our kids, but the adults. Is there any other administrator that wants to comment on that? Matt?
I think that's probably the most important question that we're going to have is how do we go about making people comfortable working in this environment again? It doesn't matter how great of a plan we come up with, we cannot execute it without the educators that work here. We can't. It's not that is the most important thing. And I think that is, to me, the biggest reason to look at this delay in-person learning and to have that that virtual remote experience so that students can continue to learn while we're able to do those team building activities, to work people back in, to work out what the barriers are. There are some fears that are very real. These are not imagined fears. And we need to be able to get people in here to walk around or put our eyes on each other and to talk through how we work through those fears. We've got to be able to do that. It's the emotional well-being of our kids is in the hands of our teachers. And so we need that opportunity to be able to work with them, getting here, getting in the building, and doing that team building, I think was the word that you used, Jessica, to get that, because you're right, students are very, very good at seeing any sort of anxiety from their parents or from their teachers. Those are the people that they generally have the most influence. And so that, to me, is probably the most important part of my feeling on why we should start the way that Mark laid out for us.
Thank you, Matt. If there aren't any other administrators that want to respond to that, I'll move to Lily.
Is it on?
I just want to really tell you, Mark, how much I appreciate what you said. I wrote a few pages that I was going to direct at you, and you addressed almost everything that I had in my comments. So I'm impressed that you have mental telepathy or something.
Call my mother,
I definitely am still concerned about a few things that, just questions really, but, when people actually get back into the building. And I fully support the delay. You know, not knowing what's happening, I'm a little unclear as to how we're gonna reconvene and decide as we move forward. Is that our decision or your decision? That's one thing. And then when students do come back into the building, how are we expecting our faculty and staff to do their teaching, do their mask enforcing, excuse me, do their social distancing enforcing, as well as sanitizing their classrooms? I know as a mother of 4 kids, it's incredibly hard to be cleaning up everything after everything they do. And this is, so I just heard last Thursday that we didn't have enough custodians at the moment. We are not going to allow volunteers in the building. So it's going to become another task that our faculty and staff are going to have to take on. So that concerns me just for the workload, for mental emotional piece, and just the stress level of that. So I just wanted to say that, and then I'm sure I'll come back. But one thing that someone mentioned to me today was that if everyone goes away a little angry, we've made a good compromise.
Okay, Lily, I'm gonna try to tackle these, and if I forget something or I don't, you go back to your list. Make sure I get these. First is decision. I want to emphasize that, and I'm going to say this as respectfully as I can. I'm not trying to kick the can down the road. I really have taken all of the feedback to heart and looked at it, and I am trying to find a way to honor all of those pieces and build the capacity to do that in a way that doesn't have people feel we're kicking the can down the road. That's one. Decisions. I'm going to say this again. If it all goes south, if things implode or the plan doesn't work, I'll take responsibility for it because that's my job. But at the end of the day, I do believe the answer to your question is having people come together and work collaboratively. That's the power and the capacity of what we do. The answer to your question is statutorily, and I've said this many times, but I'm not, as I deliver it, I want to say this very respectfully. The decision to open and close schools rests with the superintendent of schools. That's by statute. But I've said from day one, I would never come in here and just arbitrarily make that decision. I believe that this has to have capacity, staff buy-in, community buy-in. It's the only way we're going to really get something that's substantive and work. That decision, evaluating the data, one of the core components here, it's not just PPE, it's not just feelings. The most important thing is, are we ready and do we really know what the impact has been? I mean, we believe we know right now there's no community spread. As of Friday, there's no community spread. That's a good thing. We should pat ourselves on the back. We're doing a great job. But do we really know if we're asking visitors to voluntarily report? We probably do. But do we really want to get this wrong? Do we really want to make a mistake? I don't. I care about my family as much as I care about everybody in this room and every kid and every staff member. And we better make sure we get it right. And so to that point, there's a lot of people that have a lot of information and a lot of expertise. Dr. Krevins, Dr. Kufler, and the scientists at the lab, and the local public health officials in concert with Maine CDC. And we have to have people at the table to know. It's been suggested to me that Some decisions are made in a vacuum or without transparency. I don't want to get defensive. That resonates with me. Okay, if that's the perception and that's the reality, let's get people around the table so they know what information we're looking at and what those recommendations are. And then that needs to come to the board. This board needs to reconvene, and I and the administrators need to report on our progress, hold us accountable, and give you the facts. And then again, just like this process, allow the board to make a decision. And hopefully we can make it sooner. Hopefully we'll make more progress. That would be my answer to that piece, Lily. No, you didn't get my hackles up. Lily, I'm energized with this work because I see some hope and I see some promise, and I'm excited about getting kids back, and I'm excited about getting staff back, but they need to be excited as we are, and they need to feel comfortable with that, and they need to feel safe. That's the thing that keeps me up at night. And it's not me, I'm just, if I sound like I'm being defensive, I'm not. I'm enthused and I'm passionate about it.
The follow. I have Lily and then Aaron, I saw your hand.
I just want to, I just really, really appreciate that you are asking us for what you need, because on Thursday, I was really feeling frustrated that you weren't telling us what you need. You were kind of trying to figure out where we were standing, or you were trying, I don't know, my sense was that you were really trying to kind of raise the horizon and get a sense from everybody where everyone was. But for me, that was frustrating because I left feeling like I kind of had a gut feeling of what you really needed, and you weren't asking for it. And that was my letter to you, and so thank you very much for asking for what you need.
Aaron, did you have a question? No. Okay. All right. Robin, sir.
Can you just give us a vision of what you think remote learning is going to look like in the first 2 weeks? Because remote learning, as we've all discussed in March, was less than ideal. And do we expect this just to be a few hours a day? Are we expecting a full 7 hours? What are we envisioning? And are we envisioning the kids are going to walk away with something in these 2 weeks?
Thank you, Robinson. Thank you, Robinson. I'm going to start, and I hope my colleagues will jump in, because I'm going to tell you the answer to that question is it'll look a lot different than it did in the spring, because I'm really proud of the reflection our staff has done. I'm really proud of the feedback our community has given us. I'm really proud of the fact that our administrators and everybody recognizes that was our first foray into that. And we've learned so much, and we should expect it to look different. And Julie, I don't know if Julie or anybody else wants to talk about some of the things we've learned and what we're planning on and how that's going to look different. Anybody want to take a stab at that? Thank you. This is where the real power and I think the real substance comes, when you can hear some of these people talk. We're not trying to sell you anything. This work has been ongoing through the summer. Take it away, Julie.
So I will speak about the high school work, and I think that's something that is very unique about this district is that we're able to have teachers work over the summer and pay them, and we have. There isn't a teacher who isn't on a team right now working to design remote learning for the fall, and this began in June. I've been meeting with teachers regularly. We have been troubleshooting technology, bandwidth, different apps in order to accomplish, I don't have a whiteboard, what do I do? Well, we're going to learn how to use Explain Everything, and that's an app coming to a store near you. We have been more transparent. So one of the things, we were a little more day by day, kind of working it out, as we went in the spring, because there were so many unknown pieces to it. And we survived it, but this is very different. We're going to have learning maps. They're going to be laid out into, chunks of time.
So you as a parent can see the progression and say, okay, these are the things you're supposed to be doing over the next few weeks. These are the assessments that are coming. It'll be the same in one Algebra 2 class as it will be in another. There's going to be so much consistency. We are being choosy on what we want to accomplish during this time in order to be strategic with the time that we have, and there will be more time. It's not going to be 90 minutes a week like it was last year per course. We're looking at minimum of 4 60-minute periods. It might adjust a little bit with bus schedules and things like that we're thinking about as we move into a hybrid. But what we would like to do is set up the same schedule remotely that will go into a hybrid model so that kids can get used to the routine and they can get used to the expectations, and then they could fluidly go in. It's also going to be supportive of our students who have chosen to go remote from the beginning. So they will be in that same schedule and then continue to go remote, while when our buildings are ready, we'll be able to have some live instruction, and that is being practiced too. So I think that we have done a tremendous amount of preparation. I feel so confident about it in terms of our preparedness. Grading is going to be different, and that I know that was another issue. And this is we're going to go back to our regular grading practices that we've had before COVID. So that is going to be a shift. It is a motivator for some, not all. So we're going to be talking about how we can bring kids in socially and emotionally too, and spend time connecting with kids. I don't want to discourage rigor, but the first 2 weeks of school, we're not going to be pounding that. We're going to be pounding new apps. We're going to be talking about community building. We're going to be talking about what it might look like when we come back in and what you can expect. So there'll be a lot of preparation for kids to be ready to come back in when we're ready. And that's a little better than our usual everybody in the auditorium, and we're going to, read you the riot act for an hour and then you're going to remember it all, right? They're so excited to be in the building, they don't remember a word we say sometimes. So that's going to give us a lot of time to prepare kids to actually come in and be safe and successful too. So there'll be a lot of preparation for apps, different technologies, different routines, different expectations. So it's not going to be heavy on the content in the beginning, but we think, if we do a good solid start, we'll be ready to go once we get into our groove.
Could anybody, elementary principals, speak to, Julie did a nice overview of high school, but give a synopsis of elementary, what the work is to date? Thank you, Julie. Thank you, Julie.
I was hoping I wouldn't have to get out of that nice middle seat, but hi, everybody. So I've been working closely with Julie on that vision for the high school, and we're aligning all of the learning, as she said, into chunks. So at the high school, that's 9-week chunks, because 2 9-week chunks make a semester. At the elementary school, we're going to look at 3-week chunks. At the middle school, 6-week chunks. And what we mean by a chunk is that's a connected, coherent unit of study. Maybe the reading and writing and social studies and science might be going on together. There'll be a group of adults that'll be connected to a pod of kids at the elementary and at the middle school level. All of our elementary teachers, K-4, will be working with the Mind Up curriculum and mindfulness and working on those social emotional pieces and skills from the beginning. That wasn't consistent when we went out last time. The places where teachers were working with those skills, kids had many more self-regulation strategies. And so now we want to make sure that happens across. In the middle school, we are implementing an advisory in every middle school group. Those pods are going to look different. The schedule's not going to be the same. Yes, specials will be integrated into the K-8 instructional program. But it's going to look more like there'll be some adults that'll be with that pod of kids, and those specials will be with those kids, enhancing what they're doing to limit some exposure before that teacher goes and works with maybe 2 or 3 other pods after 6 weeks or something like that. We don't have all the details was waiting for this piece. I have a lot of plans and then another plan, and then another plan, and then another plan. I have also been working with teachers all summer. Many of our teachers have been developing really great examples and materials and resources for their peers. There's going to be a lot more. We know we need to be reaching out to parents a lot more. We've already got some videos that have been produced as samples, and we're going to have a lot more of that kind of outreach. We know that K2, really K4, in many cases, had a lot of trouble turning work in. They didn't have a really good platform to work with. We are purchasing what's called Seesaw. It's a very intuitive, much more, kids can speak their responses, they can upload images. It's a much more interactive platform. And that will be across all of our schools for K4. 5-8 will use Google Classroom, and our entire district has invested in what is the enhanced Google Suite, so that the Google Meets will be of a better quality and you can do more things with them. And that platform will be more stable. Can I answer any other questions? Do I know what the day is going to look like? So we don't know yet, because we haven't worked at every school saying, okay, this is what's going to happen and this is what's going to happen. We know in those descriptions that I shared with you at the last meeting, kindergarten will be either half day or full day. That's going to depend on a number of things. At the elementary level, we're going to have virtual only teachers. So teachers aren't going to be expected to do the live teaching and the virtual teaching, because it's hard to do that if you're taking kids out in the woods and walking all around and all that kind of thing. So we will have, assuming the board approves, we want to have those positions available so that those teachers can work with virtual only. And those expectations will be the same across the district for the amount of instruction and the amount of interaction that those teachers will have with students, and it will be more than what was provided in the spring. At schools, we're looking at a hybrid model. We're also looking at a half-day model. There's pros and cons to each. And I think each school is going to have to release its schedule because of the specific limitations of that building and staffing and groups of kids. But we are ready to go into 5,000 miles an hour to make sure that that all gets figured out, and that it gets figured out collaboratively with teachers and with the building-based teams, and that it gets communicated out to parents.
Thank you, Julie. This might be a good time for us to hear from the different principals. Your either thoughts or concerns or where you stand, Barb. Take it away.
So I'm speaking for myself. I've been here close to 30 years, I think. Bunky, you can correct me if I'm wrong. What I want to say is we as a community have dealt with amazing tragedies, challenges, etc., and we can do it. We have an amazing community that works incredibly well together. I've been, when I talk to other people, we don't have a situation where we can't talk to our local emergency people, that we can't have conversations with our doctors, our nurses, our PAs, etc. There aren't many communities that have world-renowned scientists that also happen to be our parents in some schools and our families, and they're as invested as we are in their child's education. So our capacity is amazing. Now, having said that, I want to be really clear that we can't be driven by fear. I'm in my 60s. I have medical conditions. I am concerned as the next person. I would no longer put myself in an unsafe situation than I would any of my staff or any of my students. And I want to be clear about that. I want to make sure that both sides are assuming good intentions. This is not me against you. This is not you against them. This is us. This is our community. Having said that, I'm really concerned about safety in the sense that when I talk to local medical people over the weekend, Barb, today you could open, just like Mark said. Scientists, today you could open. But the onslaught we've had in Bar Harbor, they cannot guarantee me that in September 8th, 3 weeks from now, that we won't see some transmission. I don't think it's fair to parents to give them a 48-hour notice to say, we've got community transmission, sorry, we cannot be in person with your children. I don't think that's fair. I also don't think it's fair to give us an unended, time for being remote. I don't think that's in our best interest. Let's see. I think it's really critical to know that teachers have been asking for this decision to be made with local medical professionals, local scientists, local expertise. That has been done. And as I said, our rate right now, the last I looked, which I think was Saturday, is 35 cases in Hancock County per 100,000. Positivity rate was less than 2%. That is not the same as Georgia or Florida or some of those other places. That's not to minimize that we don't have concerns. But we're not one situation fits all. We need to look at the data. We need to make good decisions. Let's see, what else did I want to tell you? The safety protocols have to be in place. I've ordered thousands of pieces to the Maine Department of Education. I don't know that it's going to be here. I've also been able to secure a lot of cleaning materials. People do know me as a hoarder. Yes, I have been able to help out other people. I will continue to do that. But I want to make sure, again, that it's safe for everybody, okay? Let's see. I guess what I'm looking for is a mindset that says, we can do this. We've got this. I want a can-do attitude, not a can't-do. So I am waiting for my community, whether it's staff, whether it's parents, or whatever, to come up to me and say, hey, Barb, what do you need? And have you thought about this? That's where we've got to go. I feel really, really strongly about that. So I've said my piece. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there other principals? Matt?
I just want to follow that up by saying how fortunate I feel, and we all should feel, because we live in a place that we have the privilege to be able to have this conversation. The reason we have that privilege is we have a board and community members like you who are willing to listen to all sides, to all perspectives. We have a superintendent who spent all summer listening and hearing some pretty sharp conversations at times and absorbing all of that and then saying, okay, I'm putting my stake in the ground. This is what I think we should do. That takes leadership. We've got that going for us. And this is the second half of the thing I was going to say before. The reason I know we're going to be all right is because of the quality of the people who work in these buildings. We have some of the finest educators. When I say educators, I mean bus drivers and front office staff and teachers and ed techs and everything else. We have some of the finest educators on the planet. And so whatever the plan is that we do, it's going to be done well. And it's going to mean something. The kids are going to walk away from 2 or 3 weeks of remote or 6 weeks or I mean, who knows, whatever it is, I know that once we get back to doing it, we're gonna do it well. And that's not just a leap of faith, because like Julie said, all the work I've seen people doing to get ready for this is a challenge. And this is a challenge that we have the capacity and the will, and to go with what Barb said, the drive to say we can do this and we're going to. So I am really excited to, I don't think I've really ever said this any other time in the past. I can't wait for the summer to be over so we can actually start getting out there and getting away from the theoretical and the planning. Maybe like whenever this meeting is over tonight, we go from maybe or what are we going to do to let's go do it. And I think that's what we're really good at. So thank you again for giving us the privilege to be able to have those conversations.
Thank you, Matt. Are there any other K-8 principals that want to share? Yep, Gloria?
Hi there. My name is Gloria Del Tandro, and I'm the principal at the Mount Desert Elementary School in Northeast Harbor. I'd like to echo a little bit of what Barb and Matt said, and I'll just start off with this. I'm going to toot my own horn for a second. I prepare. It's what I do. It's just what I've done. I went to camp when I was a kid, and I'd get the list of what I need to bring, and I'd rewrite the list. I'd put it in categories, and then I'd pack, and it's what I do. And another thing that I do really well is, one thing I inherited a staff full of awesome people at my school. And then I've also had the good fortune to hire some really remarkable educators. So I echo what Matt says, that we have such great capacity here. And my teachers at my school and the teachers on our operations team that have been meeting since March, we met Saturday, March 14th, to put a plan in action for the kids we knew that were going to be struggling. And this team has been meeting all the time since then. We have protocols, we're ready to go, and all of our preparations and all of our people, I think that what Matt said is correct, that we want to put this into action and we want to take these preparations and get feedback from teachers and get our schools open, because it has never been more clear to me how important our schools are to our community. And I also want to say this. I truly believe that the testing program for our teachers is something that's going to play a large role in us returning to school safely. I think that we are super fortunate to live here. I'm so proud to be a part of this, and I was able to sit in on the meeting on Friday, and I look forward to continuing that work. And I can't emphasize enough, I think, the relief that it's going to bring to us to have that program in place for our staff. Thanks.
Thank you, Gloria. Is there anybody else? I have not Gloria, sorry, Crystal, and then Jem. And then Crystal.
This question might best be answered by Melissa or Paige, but it involves the two ends of the educational spectrum. Resource room on one end and gifted and talented on the other end. I received a great deal of feedback this summer from folks who said remote learning did not work well with their children who were in one of those two spectrums. Is there a plan in place that is going to address the needs of these students? And if there isn't, will there be a plan in place that will address the needs of these students when school is ready to start?
Melissa, you want to try that?
So Jim, Julie's gonna speak to the gifted and talented piece. That piece is under her. But as far as special ed, we individually plan these programs. And so we will be amending and putting contingency plans onto every IEP so that it can go from remote to hybrid to in-person, whatever happens throughout the year, we're gonna be ready. We were not ready for that in March and didn't have time to put all that into place. We definitely served kids, but probably not as intensely as they needed. And we did the best we could during that time. So we will absolutely be serving kids.
So I think there's a couple of different answers to your question. And one part of it had to do with the fact that in the spring, we very explicitly recognized that a lot of kids and families were under a tremendous amount of stress. And the response to that was to maybe not expect as much as some students were ready for. Okay? We've talked about that. You'll keep hearing me say chunking. You'll keep hearing me say amphibious design. We want to be able to go smoothly from remote to in-person and then, God forbid, back to remote without losing that learning continuity that includes a plan for how are we going to challenge our students? How are we going to offer them additional opportunities? This summer, we had 78 students participate in our summer virtual enrichment. Several of those students were our GT students who continue to really work together and have challenges and really push one another. And we made some arrangements for some of those groups for kids to come from across schools to be able to find other kids like them. There's silver linings to all of this. And we're learning a lot more about what that group of students was responding well to. We also know that some of the art and music teachers work specifically with some of their more talented students, and that wasn't consistent always. And in the places where that happened, kids really did some extraordinary work during that period. And in the places where it didn't happen, we know it needs to happen. So I can't give you a plan for every student at this point. I can tell you that we're very, very aware of this. I can tell you that in the planning, we're thinking about it. And I can tell you that our success this summer has led us to believe that there may be some other ways to offer those kinds of opportunities going forward, whether we're remote or whether we're in person.
So my name is Crystal DeGrassa, and I'm the Outer Island teaching principal for Swans Island. And I think I'd like to just start by saying the Outer Islands sometimes are seen as unique, and that word can be confusing sometimes. I think we're unique because we have to be, because we have ferries that we have to navigate, because we have an ocean to cross to get to and from school. But I think that the biggest thing these Outer Islands I'm going to share out, that I think it's important for you to hear, is that we face challenges with a can-do attitude, and we problem solve on a daily basis. And so it doesn't matter what's going to get thrown at us in education, because if it's not COVID, it's going to be something else. And I think it's how we problem solve and how we move forward collaborative that's really important. And so I don't want us to lose sight of the fact that when we get back to whatever the new norm is, it's our job as educators to create that for our students. It's our job to make them feel, as well as our staff, comfortable, but not forget that it's never going to be comfortable. It's going to be uncomfortable so that we can create something new that's wonderful. And I just want to really make sure that we share that the in-person learning is going to be critical, because it's not going to be the industrial age learning that we fought so hard to get rid of for so long already. We're going to have outdoor learning spaces that we've never had before. We're going to use technology in a new way that has never been thought of before. And I just say that because when you think about the Outer Islands and you think about teaching, and you're teaching 3 different age groups, 3 grades in every classroom, it is different. But the learning isn't different. It's individualized, it's focused, and we have to think outside of the box. So no matter what we do, I really, really want us to remind ourselves and everybody who's scared to come back It's okay to be scared, but it's our job to pave that pathway to the new norm. That's what's best for our students. So it really doesn't matter which path you take, but we all have to agree that we have to create a path where all of our students can be successful. Virtual is not the only path. In person is not the only path. So please just keep that in mind, that both are critical right now and forever, because none of our students can have the same plan and ever reach their own capacity. So I just ask you to keep that in mind.
Thank you, Crystal. All right, we've heard a lot from people, questions. We can keep discussing this. Our board members, do you still have further questions? John?
Quick specific question. I've heard a bunch of mixed messages and lots of people have been asking me on sports stuff and extracurriculars. Is that going to come to the board to decide whether or not that stuff happens, or is that an administrative choice?
Is that live? Okay. Well, John, the answer to that question is, first and foremost, we're going to be taking our guidance from the MPA, the Maine Principals Association, but it is guidance. Decisions are going to be local. I can tell you that, and I say this respectfully because as a former coach, as a former athlete, I recognize the value all of our extracurricular activities are to our kids and our community. But right now, and I'm going to say this with all due, it's one of the furthest things from my mind. Teaching and learning is the priority right now for our kids. That said, athletics, activities, co-curricular, extracurricular, are part of the teaching and learning process. Believe in that, but we're at that point where the MPA is going to be coming together, making some recommendations, I think, as early as the next couple of days. I don't want to be presumptuous, but personally, I find it hard to believe how we're going to be able to move forward with those types of things when intercollegiate athletics have been suspended at the University of Maine and many small colleges and universities. And again, I do see the importance, if we don't have those activities, of what we're going to do to support our kids and community with programming. It's going to look different, it's going to look unique, but I just can't right now, looking at the landscape, envision how that's going to happen, or more importantly, how it's going to happen safely. Bunky, you want to add anything to that, please? Yeah. And you asked who's going to make the call. Ultimately, with any decisions we make, we're coming back to the board with recommendations.
So John, today the executive director of the MIAAA, which is the Maine Scholastic Athletic Administrators Association, Jerry Durgan, was called into a special meeting today with the assistant director of the DOE along with the MPA. And they were told some schools have release schedules and stuff like that before school districts even figure out how to open schools. So they've been told, put the brakes on. Schools need to get back in. Communities need to be back in school before they even start thinking about the other stuff. And that's why we have been so lax in giving out information, because it changes all the time. If you're asking my personal opinion, until we figure out how we'll get people in this building, and then you're going to try to fizzle this distancing, wear masks, how can you go out and play soccer, do cross country, football and stuff like that, when you're asking kids to do that all day long, and then throw that away in the afternoon. So I don't personally think it's going to happen, and hopefully there'll be a decision made very, very soon. I don't want to see that to happen, but at the same token, you got to go further in life with education, academics, theater, music, whatever. And I'm not trying to bust anybody's bubble, but that's reality. So once we get some information, we'll get to it.
Yeah, I think it just wasn't coming across to the public, you know, whether or not there were decisions had been made, because there were communications about setting up for extracurriculars and whatnot. And people are
We do have a plan if we don't do extracurricular, to do something intramurally out of club, the kids club.
Bunky, could you just also let them know that that extends not just high school, but all to our elementary schools as well.
Yeah, I'm gonna be meeting with the middle school ADs on Monday, 17th, to go over that plan. And hopefully we'll know more about interscholastic activities at that time.
Julie.
I just want to add that our,
You can join, go to the mic, sorry. People can't hear.
Yeah. Golf team's
Take the wrong seat for the evening. Poor Jessica, thank you. I just want to say that our amazing community partners have been working with us. We have offers of virtual field trips. We have history backpacks being made by the Historical Society. We have a group of teachers who worked all summer in K-8 with the park and have developed specific lesson plans and have consulted with them on science kits that kids could do in their backyard, supported by teachers remotely, or we talked about how they could do it out on school property, or if we can figure out how to do a field trip, then we could even do it there. So we're really thinking about everything that we're doing in multiple modes. And I have to say that our community partners came through and the community organizations at every step of the way for activities during the April break, for help with the enrichment program, and many of them are working directly with teachers right now to enhance and enrich our program. I know that's not extracurricular, that wasn't quite your question, but I just want people to understand we're not marching people 6 feet apart into school to sit in one place, not move, and then be there for the whole day and then get up and silently walk out. That is not our vision of education. I just want to clarify that, because if we don't have joy and we don't have fun and we don't have an ability to connect with kids, whether that's remotely or in person, we're not going to be successful. And so that's what we're all thinking about very, very hard. And I know that that's one of the things, because our teachers are so thoughtful and dedicated, that is one of the things that they're concerned about. But I know, just to piggyback on some of what was said before by Barb and Matt, I know that once we say, look, you know that that's important, here's some ways you can do it, that they'll take it and run with it, and we'll connect with our kids.
Thank you, Julie. Heidi.
I have a couple of clarifying questions. So I came into this meeting completely wanting to be back in the buildings. And after tonight's meeting and thinking about it this weekend, I lost sleep all weekend. I tossed and turned. I stressed over this, reading comments through Facebook, emails through the teachers, the parents, even students. I stressed all weekend about tonight's meeting. I'm comfortable with that 2-week period because I don't think that we're gonna have the proper things in place to be back in the schools as far as PPE. But I do want to know what it's supposed to look like after those 2 weeks. And if things stay as minimal as they are right now with the virus, is our plan to go back to a hybrid and then to start with hybrid and have kids and if they choose to be remote, what does that process look like? Can they flip flop? I know we mentioned on Thursday that, there won't, for a grading period, we'll keep them as, the choice that they make. But are people that are going to be in school, if they feel uncomfortable in a situation in the community, are they going to be able to pull those kids out and go virtual? I do. Okay. Yeah. I want to agree with Barb that we can't let fear guide us at all. On a personal note, I have been working since all of this first started, and I was not allowed to be home with my kids because I didn't have that choice. And that was when there was even less known about this virus than there is now. Fear, yes, is a horrible thing. I have serious fear now about how my 11-year-old daughter is going to get a proper education at home with no parents there to keep her accountable, and how she's going to properly learn and have any assistance from us after I get home at night and I have to make dinner and it's 8 o'clock at night and she's like, I don't want to do my homework. I can't ask any questions. Yeah, you're not going to answer my questions. That's a personal thing for me, and I think that that's shared by a lot of other parents as well. If they're working, how are we gonna properly assist those parents in that two-week period? I understand there's not gonna be a lot of expectations, but I think I'm afraid that we're gonna go down a rabbit hole of expectations that we didn't have in the spring, and if we stay remote, that expectation, because people are gonna get tired. Teachers gonna be in the building teaching remotely, but parents are still working and they're still having to fight that fight with their kids. That is a serious concern with me. And then I had another question about those 200 swabs in the Jackson lab. It was raised on Thursday night at our workshop that, there's a serious concern for kids that might be symptomatic and don't have the resources to pay for the testing. So, we could have kids in this district that could have the virus and just don't go get tested because they don't have it. Are those 200 swabs, are they only for asymptomatic, or could we use those in our district to help those kids that might not have insurance pay for the symptomatic testing? Because studies show that asymptomatic testing is not, it's not conducive. It gives us an inaccurate representation about what's going on. You can't test for something that you don't have. Asymptomatic, yes, you might not have a fever, and you could test negative one day and then 2 days later test positive. So, I have a problem with the asymptomatic testing. I know the Jackson Lab has done a lot of research and that's great. But working at the hospital, we're not testing for asymptomatic. We don't. We just don't do that unless you're gonna have, a surgery, and that's what we need to have done to have your surgery. But asymptomatic testing is not proven to be effective. I think that it gives false hope, I think that we should be, if we can, use those tests to help those kids in our district that might not go to the doctors because they don't have the money to pay for that testing. And then my other question was, what will the support look like for the parents when we are remote? I know you said communication, but we're not teachers. We didn't go to school for it. We're having to make those decisions for the people that have, and I understand that, and it's a very difficult decision to be in. But I want to know what kind of supports are going to be in place other than just communication for parents that didn't finish high school, can't help their kids, can't help support their kids at home. Parents that have children who have behavioral issues, how are we going to help those kids stay on track? How are we going to help the parents that are at work, can't, and then are going to have to fight with their kids later on at night, and then lose a whole weekend because they're having to do schoolwork? Those are the things, and I'm sorry, I'm getting a little emotional, but these are real hard things. I understand the teachers' concern, I do. I have a problem when someone tells me that I don't care about someone's life because I'm asking them to do the job that they were hired to do. Whether it's in class or virtual, I'm sorry. I saw a lot of, and what are we gonna do with support staff, ed techs? If we're virtual, how are they gonna be one-on-ones? Those are the things that I ask. Sorry.
So Heidi, I'm gonna try to tackle a few of those, and my colleagues, please jump in and fill the blanks. The first thing I'm gonna speak to, and there's a lot, so if I miss anything, just circle back and remind me. Let's start with the testing first. Again, I have no expertise in testing, and don't pretend to, so I am working very closely with top people at both the hospital and the Jackson Lab to mirror the testing program that's alive and in place in our community right now with frontline employees. There are 39 businesses, frontline park rangers, and other entities. And we've had 2 meetings to date. Matt was part of that, Ian was part of that, Gloria was part of that. And again, I want to leave the names out, but we're working with some top people who have expertise in this area. Directly to your question, Heidi, the resources that we're being offered, these 200 startup tests are for staff. They're for adults. They are not for children. That's not to say that we shouldn't support kids and families. I think we have to work with our medical providers and our medical community if there are gaps to be able to provide those supports for our students. But I want to be really clear. The testing that is being supported and offered is testing for employees. Now, we are looking to test 20% of our population. And I don't want to get too far down the testing road because I'm taking the guidance from these individuals. And our testing program will be a voluntary testing program. I'm very confident we're going to have plenty of people that will step up if we're looking to do 20% of our staff across the AOS. Matt or Ian or Gloria, if there's anything to add on testing, please circle back. The second piece you mentioned is how are we going to support, or another piece you mentioned, how are we going to support our families? And I think one of the ways I'd address that is I think you answered the question, Heidi. We have supports, we have incredible paraprofessionals, ed techs, and other resources that can and should support our kids and employees. And again, what we know now is very different than what we knew in the spring. Jim brought up some pieces about special needs students and gifted and talented. Others brought up what's going to be different than the remote experience I had in the spring that wasn't that positive, if that was the case. I think, or I know, that building in some of those supports with training and using some of the resources we have can, in fact, better support kids and parents who may not have expertise or comfort level in those areas. What was the other piece that you had, how you just shouted out? The first piece you had, I'm sorry.
Just a clarifying question.
Yeah, please.
So how do those supports work in place after hours when the teachers are not in the buildings? Because that's where people are gonna need them.
How do those supports work in place after hours? I'm gonna go out on a limb here, okay? But what we do now looks very different than what we did in March. And I know that we had people working outside of the box more than we could ever expect. People were working day and night to support our kids. And I think we need to take a step back and look at how we can be flexible, flex scheduling, and looking at some of those gaps and how we can fill those gaps. It might work better for somebody's schedule, or that individual might be one of those individuals through our process that we work through that has some compromised conditions that it would be a good match to have their skill sets in a remote capacity, filling the blanks and serving a wide variety of folks. So that's one way I would respond to that.
Mark, can I?
Please, Heather.
Talk about the test, Heidi. I'm getting text messages from medical providers. So it sounds like there's some options. It sounds like there's some ability for the test to be free. So I guess the point is, rather than going into the specifics right now, not knowing all the details, it seems like we have some partners that we can follow up with. And
the reason why I asked is it was brought up at Thursdays,
Yep.
and it was something I had thought about, over the weekend. Well, those tests are available, and I didn't realize they were those tests. That was just something that came to my mind.
Yeah, but it seems like it's a matter of research and that would be sort of the communication to the families.
And I want to be really clear to the community. We are blessed to be in a position to even consider this. I'm not aware of other schools that have this, but 200 tests startup is not a lot. And that's going to get us started. But we don't have the resources or the budget to continue it. So we're in hopes that we can partner and work with our community to keep that going. We believe that's one of the core components that's going to allow us to do the things that Ingrid asked. How do we get people back in school? How do we ensure that we're keeping people safe? Having a testing program is one of the legs of the stool. It's not the whole stool. It's one piece. And the other piece that you mentioned, Heidi, is that those ed techs and those additional employees that are, those other employees that are so important to us, in addition to our teachers, they need the trainings and the supports as well. And we need to be able to provide them the same opportunities as we give our teachers and administrators. I do see the fact that the learning curve was very high for us in the spring. And I see I see many of the things that we learned from last spring being able to be implemented by our professional staff as well as our support staff. Does anybody else have anything they want to add to that? Because I don't want to gloss over anything. Any administrator at all? No? Heidi, was there anything else that I didn't address or I need to follow up on?
The hybrid model, when we are able to go back into school safely, the hybrid model that like dropping and adding
Yes.
I know we mentioned.
Yes.
You got to pick something for a grading period.
Right.
But if they were in class, could they go virtual in the middle of that grading period, or would they have to stick with it?
a family all of a sudden didn't feel comfortable or whatever. So I think it's gonna be.
No, Julie, you gotta come up here, or you gotta go down there, I'm sorry. They can't hear you. Sorry. While she's making her way down, Heidi's question was, our kids are gonna be able to transition from one learning model to the other, remote, hybrid, and what does that look like? Correct, Heidi? Okay, go ahead, Julie.
So I think you bring up a really, really good point, Heidi, and thank you for your question. I think we need to be thinking about building on some of the systems that did work in limited places in different schools. So for example, I think about one of the systems that was up at MDES and really was able to, through that team, really respond individually to each family in terms of what their needs were. I think we have to think out of the box to figure out, okay, do we need a call line? Okay, how do we need, what do people need? And I really welcome your thinking with us, because I think all the administrators would agree that this is a lot to think about. We need to do it well, and we might not think of everything. So those questions are really, really important. So thank you.
Yeah, let me talk a little bit about the high school. So at the high school, is this on?
No, flip the switch all the way to the top, Julie. You'll see the red light, you're good.
Okay. Yes?
Yep.
Okay, at the high school, we planned for this from the beginning. The schedule is always a complicated thing at the high school, and that's why we chose to do what's called a high flex model, which is basically there could be live instruction or kids could be streaming in, and in case there is a outage, they can do something asynchronously, which would be a recording and an alternative assignment, so they don't miss that work. To keep this a reasonable number, because we are asking people to tell us if they're coming or not, so that we can assign classrooms. Ian has done a really good job working with Butch Bracey in identifying this classroom can house 12 people, this classroom can do 16. But in that, it's small numbers. So we've gone ahead and created extra sections of basic classes. So typically we have 7 or 8 freshman English classes. This year we have 10, because we wanted to make sure we kept our numbers low, so that we did have some fluidity. So we are asking people to make a decision and let us know so we can plan, but we have taken some measures in advance to kind of mitigate any of that. So.
Thank you. Jessica.
Can we ensure by September 8th, everyone's going to have Wi-Fi to participate in remote learning?
Good man.
Yeah, one of the things that
Josh,
was a.
tell people what you do,
Oh,
please.
sorry, Josh, I'm the technology coordinator for the AOS. One of the challenges we had in the spring was all of these students suddenly at home. And as you are all aware, we have a lot of places on MDI and in Trenton that don't have real good access to broadband internet, and it's a problem, and it's stuff that we've tried working through. And the Maine Department of Education really came through for us in the spring. We had a survey, and we asked all the parents if they had access. We were able to get a number. We got actually 35 tablets that could be used as hotspots from the Maine DOE, and those are still ours. We have those to keep. So that was a generous thing on their part to do. Since then, what we've realized is that there were a lot of parents that, for whatever reason, in the spring, they said we can make it by using our personal cellular phone hotspots, or Spectrum offered a short-term deal with them, and we had some families take advantage of that, and that got them through the spring. What we're finding, though, is that some of that really isn't sufficient for families. So we've identified an extra around 75 between students and staff of extra hotspots that we're gonna need. I'm working with a couple of different vendors right now to try to figure out how we're gonna do that, because that's one of the things that's in very short supply. When we first started looking at this in the spring, I checked around with vendors that we've worked with and nobody had them in stock. The main DOE was fortunate to get these. I do have a couple of vendors I'm working with right now that do have limited stock. And so we're working on, and I'm getting quotes for that. So it is something that we know is an issue, and I'm working to try to figure out how best to do that. So more answers on that coming, but it is something that I'm currently, in fact, I have a meeting tomorrow with one of those vendors, so a phone call. So.
Josh, can you just say this? Are we at least in a position, we're not in a worse position than we were last spring?
No, we're actually in a better position.
Can you repeat the question, please?
We actually, Mark had asked if we're in a worse position than we were in spring or better. We're actually in a little bit better position. The MDOE put out a second, actually it was a third survey, and we are gonna be able to get a few additional, I think it was 10 that are coming for MDI Trenton, and then several on Cranberries and Frenchboro. So we are getting additional devices through them, but we're still gonna be short probably about 75. So that's what we're working on, figuring out and sourcing right now.
Thank you, Dr. Yes, Mark.
We were asked a question about food service, so I just want to put it out there for the board. Question, and I'm Bunky, awarded me the fact that there was some questions, I believe it might have been community, it could have been staff, about food service. And at a minimum, we will be working towards the same level of support that we had last spring to ensure that all of our families with food insecurity issues, their needs are addressed. And we'll work with our food service staff to do whatever we have to do to deliver services. Our plan will be to have those services up and running, whether we're delivering them on site or we have to work within our communities to do so. But I want to make sure people know that's within our threshold, and that's why it's important that we have support staff included in this plan as well.
Thanks, Mark. Carrie.
Hi, I'm Carrie Hayes, new to the board in Fremont, in case you don't know me. I could say so many things, but one thing I want to say, 2 comments and 2 questions. One comment is, I feel like Mark was falling on his sword a lot at the beginning of this meeting and taking blame for things not being done. I just feel like so much has been done this summer, and I really appreciate the work of Julie and Mark and the principals. I see Jandria's car at the Tremont School all the time. There has been work that's been being done all summer long, and it's unfortunate that we didn't have more in front of us earlier, but at the same time, I really hate to hear him taking blame. The second thing is, I'm so happy that we are in a community that has science that we can fall back on, and that's not necessarily the case all around the country. So I don't know of another district where we've got a lab like the Jackson Lab that we can depend on those folks for really strong advice. And so I feel like if they're making a recommendation, we should be listening because they're the ones who know what's going on. My 2 questions. One is, if we are in remote learning, whether it's for the 2 weeks or whether it's longer, we talk about childcare. I know Mark mentioned that in his opening comments. I'd like to know what we're looking at for childcare. I know Ingrid spoke on Thursday and said that she can't continue to keep offering things at Harbor House, never ending. So who are we working with to try and give some breaks to families that don't have childcare? I know I'm a single mom. Thank goodness my kids are old enough that they could do this by themselves, because I don't know how I would have worked. And I'm in a really high stress job. I plan conferences. So, my world was blown up with all this as well. So I did not have the time to hold my kids' hands. I was home with them, but that didn't mean that I could help them with their school during the day. And I know I'm not the only person. So how are we going to help these folks? one suggestion that I had was, can we encourage families? There are a lot of families out there that have chosen a couple of families that they're potting with during the summer. You can have sleepovers, you can be in our houses. I know my kids have 2 friends each that they can do that with. Can those families be encouraged to pod together while they're in virtual learning and have the opportunity so that we can work schedules around so that parents aren't being expected to find childcare every day. Maybe they're only 1 day a week or 2 days a week that they're in charge of the kids that are learning, and encourage them to keep those groups small. And then what was my other question? That might have been it. Okay, I'll end with that. Thank you.
That's a tough one, Carrie, but I'm going to give it to you straight. We can't balance that expectation of community supports on Harbor House, on the Y, or any one entity. And as I said in my comments, that there are probably relationships that we can and should develop that don't exist yet. There's an incredible amount of resources that I don't even believe we've scratched the surface on, but we won't be able to do that until we can sit down as a group and we can sit down as individual schools and teams and figure out. I want to say this carefully too, because education and childcare are mutually exclusive. Let's be clear about that. We are educators, but let's also in the same vein consider that parents can go to work if kids aren't present or in school. I want to say that respectfully because it's a fact. We have to, we can and should provide public education, but we have to be realistic to the fact that if that education is in person and live, and parents can't have their kids in school, that's an issue. We've never had to deal with that type of situation in this way. And so we have to think outside of the box and how we're going to partner with those agencies that don't have the staff or the resources, but maybe we do have some staff. And maybe we can shift some resources, and maybe we can think outside of the box as to how we're going to support those organizations and others, and think about the use of space that is mutually exclusive of the schools. We are educators, and what we do is teaching and learning. But we can't turn our back on the fact that parents and community members need support. And I'm confident we can build those supports. I'll give you a quick example of that. When we started our pre-K program in a district I was in previously, we had to build some supports with community partners. And when we went down the road where we considered we were going to pilot an early release program, we had to build in supports for communities when kids were going to be released. I can see a process or a system that replicates that, working with community partners and those entities. And this is, again, why we need a little time to build that. I think we can get it done, but I can't do it alone. Any principal or anybody want to add to that? Or Ingrid, I don't know, I don't want to put you on the spot, but this can't be balanced on the back of Harbor House or any one other organization. I know Camp Beachlift has reached out, and there's a ton of others that we'll work with and roll up our sleeves to get this done.
I'm sure. I just want to clarify, my comment on Thursday was that Harbor House can't cover every kindergarten through 4th grader in the district, right, which is hundreds of kids. But I want to clarify because I've been having conversations with what I will call our Harbor House families, because the kids have been with us all spring and summer, that we've been having conversations for the last couple of weeks. We will be open because I know that parents have to go to work. I had a conversation today with Rhonda, who's our principal at Pemmican, about the possibility of utilizing ed techs or some staff that would not be fully engaged with the virtual learning, because I know that my staff can't take, say, 20 kids and be able to oversee all of their virtual education stuff. So we're going to be open. I've already made that commitment to our parents. My comment Thursday was that I can't do it for every working family in the district, obviously, because we don't have capacity. So I think
I think, like Mark said, these relationships with community partners will, now that we have a plan, I mean, that was my biggest thing. I've been telling parents, I'm gonna be here for you, but I really don't even know what that means because we didn't have a time frame. So now we have a time frame and we'll be able to make some decisions and figure out how we're gonna do it. So, just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you, Ingrid. So we've had a number of questions, information. I kind of want to come around. I don't know if there are any more questions that school board members have, or do people feel like they have enough information for us to either express personal opinions and move forward? Aaron, do you have a question? Okay.
Aaron Brown, Trenton School Board. I think one of my main concerns is probably the fear factor and the trust issue with their families, right? That may not be as careful or maybe as concerned as maybe we have been super hyper vigilant about who we're seeing, who we're getting in contact with, mask wearing, and wondering about the dialogue as far as the importance of the kids coming back. And then impressing upon these kids how important it is to wear the mask rather, because we know how successful just mandating that you have to do this, right? So we have these kids of parents who don't share the same views as we do, right? So we have to impress upon the kids, despite what their parents believe or relatives and whoever they've been seeing all summer, right? They need to come into school and they need to follow these rules, right? And now, just because they're in school, but then they're also going to have weekends where they go away. And then I also started to think down the road when we're talking about Thanksgiving and Christmas now, right? And are we going to allow people to quarantine for 2 weeks before we go off to see our families and relatives? There's a couple of X factors there about unknowns and not being able to trust other people and what they're going to do when they go home or when they take a break. But then just impressing upon the children that it's important because we're taking care of each other, you know what I mean? And that if we have some sort of a dialogue and when we see the kids in school, whether it's remote or hybrid, that we have something to tell them that's meaningful to them, that's not going to be stepping on toes or attacking their personal views on whether this is real or not. You know what I mean?
So to that point, very quickly, and this is first of all, it's no one's fault. Nobody did anything wrong. It's no one's fault that we had a summer break. It is what it is. But we've lost that capacity to formally connect with kids and families. I shouldn't say lost, but that window closed and that window's reopening. We're educators. We have a responsibility to work with kids and families to educate. And let's not forget, the reason we're in a position where we can even have this conversation is because we, our communities, our region, our county, our state have been doing a heck of a job. But we can't take our foot off the gas. But we have to do that work. This isn't about whether or not we believe. We have to look at the facts and we have to look at science and we have to educate. And we have to make sure that our staff have the resources and the capacity that when we say X, we're going to follow through with X. There's no negotiating a middle ground about things like hand washing and masks. And if we don't have our community on board, then that's part of our communication plan. Part of the work we need to continue to do, we've got nothing. If we're going, if the expectation is that we safely repopulate our schools, and it should be, then that can't just be on the backs of the people in this room. It has to be our entire community. I couldn't agree with you more, Aaron, but we've got to have the next few days and weeks to rebuild those things. And by repopulating in whatever capacity, initially if it's remote, we're gonna be able to continue those relationships and build on them. And we'll have to navigate individual challenges and individual families and individual views individually.
All right. Any other questions? Any board members want to share thoughts or opinions? Anyone want to make a motion?
I move to accept Mark Gross's recommendation of starting remote learning until September 25th, I believe you said, and then revisiting it as needed.
I think we should probably vote on the calendar first.
Yeah, we're probably good to.
Well, I move to accept the calendar change.
Vote on the calendar first?
Yeah, because you need to put that date in there.
I would respectfully recommend the board consider action on the calendar, and you go from there.
I was told I could ask a question at the end. Is that after this process?
Yeah, we do have another public comment section at the end, yeah. I see calendar there, sorry.
Yes. So would you like me to go through the recommendation quickly, Heather?
Do you want to hit action items and start, you've got the psychologist first.
Well, you can, would you like to do that? And then come back?
No, why don't we stay on our topic?
Okay. What I would recommend the board consider is first the calendar adjustment. And would you like me to?
Please.
Okay. So the approved calendar that the board approved is attached to the agenda. The quick synopsis is I am recommending that we start with students on September the 8th, which would be after Labor Day. And I'll stop there. That's the recommendation. I don't think we need to get into remote versus hybrid and all that. It's just when students begin is the issue. And so that we're really clear, by law, students are required in public education to attend for 175 days. We are recommending that we reduce that to 170 days and that those 5 days be waived. I would put in a request from the commissioner to waive those 5 days. And I might add, several Hancock County boards have already made that move for consistency of the calendar. I'll take any questions you might have.
Ingrid moved it for approval. Christie second. Any questions or comments? All right, those in favor, aye. Those opposed, nay. All right, thank you.
So with that calendar adjustment, I would now recommend that the board consider the recommendation I gave earlier, and that is to begin with on September the 8th for students with the remote instruction. We will review on the 21st our status using data, bring a recommendation back to the board. But for planning purposes, for staff and family, we're asking that window be through September the 25th, but evaluating on the Monday before as to where we are at.
What's that? Sure. All right. Questions? Yes.
I just want to say, I mean, I came here tonight to support, I was on. Better flick it.
Push it up. You're good.
I mean, I came here tonight to support and kind of advocate for a remote start. I think that was the best for our community. I like the direction we're moving in, especially the ability for us to meet and reevaluate, because maybe, our numbers stay low. We don't see, we have seen no cases on this island. I know there's cases in Hancock County, but that's only what we see through the hospital. And I'm seeing my business pick up. I am seeing a crazy amount of tourists right now in Bar Harbor. They're crowded in everywhere because restaurants don't have the capacity to seat them all. Stores don't have capacity. The sidewalks are overflowing. And I really feel like we don't know what we don't know. We don't know if 2 weeks from now we'll have an outbreak or later. I was actually, you know, as much as I want my kids in school, and I'll admit, none of my kids have even read a book this summer, okay? So my kids need to be in school. But I'm willing to push for an October 14th start date because I'm really nervous. As great as it looks right now and as great as the no cases look, we just don't know. And I've been talking with Lori Feynman down in Georgia, who, you know, is seeing teachers sick before school even starts. And I know we're not Georgia, and thank God we're not, but I'm still really nervous. And yes, I'm a business owner. I have my business open. I have 16 strangers in my house every day. I'm putting my family, I've opened up my family to that risk, but I'm not sure I'm ready to open up everybody to that risk. And so my concern, I will support this motion tonight, but I'm really concerned that I have, you know, 80 emails from teachers with you know, asking for a remote start. And we have no teachers here. We have no feedback tonight on this plan. We've got letters from associations and no presidents here, and I understand that, but it really concerns me that we're gonna be called out tomorrow. You're not listening to teachers. You're not taking our input. We tried to make assumptions and we got an email today, how dare we make an assumption because we're not teachers? I really feel we're in a difficult position and we're doing the best we can. And I appreciate everybody who's sending emails and feedback, but we need to continue that. We need to keep an open dialogue and we need to work together. We can't snipe at each other on Facebook and complain and comments. We need to open that communication because we're all doing the best we can. And I just wanted to make that statement.
Christy, thank you. Are there any other, yes, Jessica?
I have one question and one comment. Well, one is I just had my hand up to kind of echo what Christy was saying, that teachers, although we had their comment, are actually, it feels awkward that it's like the elephant in the room. And I felt a little uncomfortable when I've heard comments like people don't want to do the job they're hired to do. I haven't heard a single teacher say they don't want to do their job. I mean, we may disagree about whether that should be done remotely or that it should be done in person, but no one has said, I would like to sit home and sit in mimosas or something like that. So I just want to, you know, I mean, I'm sure we all would, but but I want to sort of lift, like we have incredible teachers in this district who do incredible work, who go to, I know, you know, my kids hated remote learning, one failed a class, you know, it was very difficult for them, but teachers made repeated efforts to reach out to them. People called them on Google Meets. My daughter set up conversations with people, you know, it was not like no one was slacking on the job. I didn't for a minute think that. So I want to lift up the incredible work that they've been doing. But then my only minor question is, we've talked a lot about kids in compliance with masking and social distancing, but how are we going to ensure that that happens among, like, it's really hard. I've seen, you know, I mean, we have a coffee shop in Southwest Harbor and we are always having to work with the poor employees about keeping their masks on, or I've seen people here with their masks on. Like, how are we going to work in a respectful way? Like, if I'm a teacher and I have cancer, say, and my colleague over here doesn't have that level of fear and has their mask down around there, how are we going to handle that in a respectful way?
Sure. Well, I guess my first response to that, Jessica, is I learned a long time ago from a mentor, you praise in public and you counsel in private. And that right there is I think a very thoughtful way of saying we have to work with people. And building capacity, Aaron mentioned similar things. Telling somebody to do something as opposed to modeling something and working with people to have common understanding and common beliefs is where we need to build capacity, not just with our staff, with our kids. I've never been a real person that thinks about punishment and discipline. That might sound odd from people that don't know me. I've always been huge on accountability, and I've always been huge on building capacity from within. And I think the greatest capacity for accountability for a kid or an adult comes from within. We want to catch people doing things right, and we want people to do the right things when we're not looking. And I think we have to build trust, and I think we have to build relationships, and we take those one at a time. That's my answer.
I just want to clarify, so if we, on September the 21st, are we gonna get back together in this room to make this decision, or is there, if we vote in a positive way to implement your recommendation, are you the one deciding on September the 25th whether or not we get people in the building?
The board chair and the board set agendas and set meetings. Administrators follow through and carry out administratively what the board's directives will be. The board may choose to meet before the 21st, and I would expect, given the high capacity for information and communication, we can't be waiting until the 21st. We're going to need to be able to provide regular updates to families, to local boards, and to our AOS board. I think Heather will validate, on most days, we talk at least once, if not twice. And I think the board chairs in this room would also confirm that whether or not it's through email or text or phones, I'm talking to these people every single day. So Lily, the answer to that is I would expect at a minimum, we'd come back then, but maybe sooner. But I will do nothing without making sure that the board has weighed in, my colleagues have weighed in, the community has weighed in. And I hope to be able to give you regular progress reports well before the 21st. I mean, let's be honest. The board approved a calendar change. Students are starting on the 8th, but our staff, thank you for giving us the gift of time to start with them earlier. And I will be able, through the principals, to report progress on a regular basis. I hope that answers the question.
I guess it's just relative to, we've gotten a lot of feedback about the 80% of people who said they would send their kids back to school. I was one of those 80% because at the time of the survey, I felt like if we're going like we're going, yeah, I'm gonna send my kid back to school. I don't feel that way right now, and I don't know how I'm gonna feel in September. I guess I'm I would much more, I'm going to be one of the compromise, go away a little bit upset because I'd rather have more time.
Yeah.
I'm not convinced that that's enough time to get everything that needs to happen to be happening when the kids get back to school. In terms of the cleaning and there's just a lot of things we don't know what that's really going to look like. So I just want to, I don't know, I'm really unsure.
So
I just want to add one thing. I want to give a disclaimer and acknowledge that we surveyed staff and we surveyed parents, but you may be one of those 80%, and I received emails from folks that have shifted their opinion on one side or the other. And that information, when we surveyed, people gave responses based upon what they knew then, not now. So that, in fairness, that's going to continue to shift, and we need to continue to evaluate that.
So, something else to add to that. I mean, Mark and I can work together on, some appropriate communication. Just as far as, if things start to change, what does that look like? We can have a communication too around the beginning of school with the teachers and what's going on, what they're hearing, what's the vibe, what are they feeling. We do have September 14th will be our next AOS meeting. So at that point in time too, they will have been in school for 4 days, but I think that would be a critical time to have the discussion of what's happening, what does it look like, and then evaluate where are we as a community. And my guess is we're probably gonna have another meeting shortly thereafter. So, yep.
We are on the same track, but a couple of the emails that I read or might have been Facebook posts said, pointed out that teachers are essential workers and that they need to get back to work. And I just want to say publicly that I don't know any teacher that hasn't worked every single day they are supposed to work, even more, worked all summer, have gone over and above what we have ever have asked them to do.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're asking them to do more. So I just want that to be out there in the public that they are not slacking. They are not sitting home drinking mimosas on days when they're supposed to be working. But I just really want to give a shout out to our teachers. That's like a really good one.
All right, if there aren't any more comments or questions, I think this is a really critical vote, and rather than just doing the hand count, I am gonna go through every board member that is present and have say their yay or nay. I'll start, Heather Jones. Yeah, I'll address that. Yes. Todd Graham.
Yes.
Teresa Leclerc, who's on Zoom. You're still muted, Teresa. Okay, I read her lips. Susan McCready.
Yes.
Kate Chaplin. Yay. Yay. Thanks, Kate. Dwayne Bolt.
Yes.
Robin Sue Tapley.
No.
Marie Yarborough. Lily Simmons. Yeah. No. Mhm. It's a conflict of interest.
I think your vote will not sway the flow. There are two reasons, my understanding. A, conflict of interest.
Yeah.
And I believe the second interest is if you believe your vote will not sway the flow.
Oh, okay.
But I'm not an expert in that, but I thought that that's the truth.
Lily wants to abstain, and I think I always have to hear the conflict of interest.
She certainly can abstain. However, you may not have a consensus and you may not have an action if you do not, you have to have X number of voting members. So I guess you won't know that until the end of the vote. But she certainly, and any board member can abstain if they so choose.
Okay. All right. Christy LaSquadra. John Bench.
Yes.
I think John Eisenhower left. Ingrid Cashmore. Jim Sawyer. Heidi Lawson. Jessica Stewart. Jessica Bass.
Yes.
Carrie Hayes.
Can I just ask a question? I thought only 3 people from.
She's going down through the whole.
Because this is such an important vote, so yes, the people who are the voting members, that will ultimately be what meets the, will be the count. But I think this is such a significant vote that we're just calling on everybody.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And my vote is yes.
Okay, thanks, Carrie. Roger Samon.
Yes.
Excuse me, can I just ask you to speak up so Selena can record? She's having a hard time hearing.
I've made notes, Selena.
I'm sorry. Excuse me.
Jennifer Bonilla.
Yes.
Gary Burr.
Yes.
Tom Reeve. Okay. Darcy Throckmorton.
Yes.
Aaron Brown.
Yes.
Tammy Tripler.
Yes. Did you get Teresa?
Teresa King Leclerc.
Yes.
Yes, I did. And then Amy Palmer.
Yes.
Thank you. And I believe I have everybody from Zoom, correct? Oh, sorry, Emmy? Okay. All right. Well, we have approval. I'll give you my, my cheat sheet when we're done. Thank you, everybody. And, that was approved. And I think, I'm not as eloquent tonight as I would like to be, but, I think a lot of people have shared their deep gratification for the teachers, for the families, for administration, and for all the work that's been done since March 13th. I mean, it was a hard decision that we sat around the table and had to make, and then a lot of work has gone into everybody's daily life to try and get to this point. I think, Lily, what you said earlier is truly perfect. You're exactly right. You have to go away angry, or a little bit angry, and then you've made a compromise. And I think you're exactly right. There's no answer here. There's no making one person or any person's happy. But I think we're on a good path to make sure that we can open the schools safely for everybody and have all the PPP and all the practices in place. So, thank you, everybody. We just have a couple more, hopefully easier items. Mark, do you want to do the nomination of the school psychologist?
Please and thank you. I'm pleased to nominate Stephanie Logue for the position of school psychologist. And again, for the community's information, I believe the board knows, we're so blessed to be able to bring additional supports to our students and communities in social emotional learning. This position that is being brought on board is being funded outside of our regular budgets, and that is a result of the great work from the administrative team and our community partners, using a combination of federal funds, grants, and other resources. We have a commitment for the next 2 fiscal years to fund this position. And I'm pleased to nominate Stephanie Logue, and her credentials and packet was circulated to the board. That is my recommendation, please.
Is there a motion? Ingrid, second. Susan? Any questions? I just want to say thank you very much for that work that's been done. As we acknowledged when this came before us before, this is a critical time. And now more than ever, we need the support. So thank you very much for all of that. Those in favor? Aye. Those opposed, nay? All right.
Normally, Madam Chair, I take this one until we elect the chair, and then I turn it back over to the chair.
Oh, yeah?
I take motion,
Yeah.
Are you okay with that?
I am.
All right.
Do you have a chair? Am I?
I'm pleased to take motions or recommendations from board members for the position of chair of the AOS board for the 2020-2021 academic year. Do we have any motions? Or nominations, rather? Do we have a nomination?
If she's willing.
I nominate Heather Jones for chair. One thing that I want to say, I want to give a shout out to our administrators, everybody who served on the task force. I had a front row seat, and Ian and Matt and Mark and Julie and the teachers that were on that committee, the community members. It was a ton of work. And we are as far as we are because of that task force. There's a lot that needs to be done, but there has been a ton of work that's been done. And Heather has been, while she wasn't on the task force, she has been leading this district. And I am so thankful that you are willing, because I wouldn't nominate her without asking her if she were willing to do this again. I think it would be a really difficult time for a change in leadership, and the amount of time and commitment you put towards this has been extraordinary. And
I don't think any one of us could have done the job that you've done. So thank you for the work that you've done, and thank you for being willing to do it for another year.
Thank you for saying that,
Yeah,
everybody.
thank
I don't know if there's anybody else that would work with me either, or tolerate me, or be patient enough with me. Is there a second to that nomination? I see a second from Mr. Graham. Are there any other nominations from the floor?
Everyone runs out of the room.
Seeing no other nominations, we will close nominations. All in favor of Heather Jones serving as chair? People can't get their hands up fast enough. I believe that all opposed. That is unanimous. Heather, thank you and congratulations. I'll just add, Heather, your leadership, your calmness, your listening, and how your grace and how you handle working with me, and your patience and working with all of your colleagues is incredible, and we are blessed to have you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, thank you. And thank you, Ingrid, for what you said. That was.
Last thing, Heather, I just want to give a quick shout out, just if I may, just to acknowledge that the last several months have been difficult, and for anybody that's reached out to me and I haven't returned an email to you or I haven't spoken to you, know that I've read them, know that I keep your thoughts with me, and I will continue to do so, and I will work like the devil to respond personally to each and every one of you. I haven't been ignoring you. I've been triaging and prioritizing and working to do the very best I can to represent everybody, no matter what their views or philosophies are, the very best I can. And I thank you for your patience. I thank you for any trust that you may give me. And I will work real hard not to let everybody down. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. We'll still need to vote on the vice chair.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's back over to you.
It's back over to me now. And I don't know, you want to do it, Jennifer?
Yeah, that's Mark.
Second.
Any questions? All right, those in favor of Jennifer Bonilla as vice chair, aye. Those opposed, nay. And secretary, Robin Sue, is that you?
Why? Not this year.
Me left this past
Oh, it's you? I'm sorry.
This is how it happened last time.
Oh, I did know it was you. Now that I think about it. Second? Those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Nay. Thank you, team. We will go forward and continue. Do you have any other business?
I have no other business, Madam Chair.
Okay. And Julie, we will get to your report someday.
I will be pleased to make a good report another time.
All right. Christy. I know, I think we lost her.
Let's go back to, sorry, I keep forgetting that. To go back to other business, because Mark has talked about our need for a human resource position. And I think it's really important because I think like starting tomorrow, we're gonna start hearing concerns of teachers and maybe to try to work together to figure out if we can find the funding for a position or a part-time position, or maybe work with our towns, because I know they're in need of human resource positions as well. So I'd like to see that like on the agenda if we can.
Thanks, Christy. We have another public comment, but I think a member of the public has left. Sorry about that. Future agenda items, HR. No, that is good, thank you. And I'm sure we'll be talking about school. Yeah. And then, so right now, our next meeting is Monday, September 14th. So at 5 o'clock, let's at least pencil that in.
I just want to make sure that we do an update of the anti-racism task
Yes.
force.
Yeah, I know it is on here. Thank you. Put that on. Right now it's 5 o'clock. I'm sure we're gonna have a high school meeting.
member of the public.
Oh, I'm sorry. Hang on one second. Let me just finish what I'm saying here and then come on down. We'll probably have a high school meeting, so we'll have to sort of juggle some of those things at that point in time. But at least put it on your calendar, 5 o'clock on the 14th. If you would just state your name and the town in which you live, please.
My name is Gareth Howell. I live in the town of Mount Desert. I was listening online, and so then raced down here legally, speeding, no speeding, etc. Just to put into the public record that I think the superintendent's office, the building-specific schools have done an awesome job over the summer. I think it's really important that we focus on more of the positive than the negative. I think our kids need educating in person as much as possible moving forward. I think it's, as a scientist at the Jackson Lab, I think it's important to recognize that it's really hard to predict what's going to happen over the next weeks, months. I think it's also important that we keep that positive perspective that today, if schools were opening, it's actually a pretty safe environment in Down East Maine and even Maine in general to get our kids in-person education. I think what we need to think hard about is whether we think about the risk of what might happen versus what it looks like today. And so I was pleased with the recommendation that got passed that ultimately the kids should go back to school as soon as possible and that the teachers should get back, and then we should look at it again on September 25th. What I heard online was that if schools were ready to go, that there would be a checklist. Those schools could basically be approved earlier than maybe September 25th, and I'd like to see that checklist and the process by which that checklist may well be approved, and that it's not just a blanket, no schools until September the 25th. I think as a scientist, we know some, but we don't know enough. So I urge the community to stay positive and to acknowledge that this is an unprecedented times and unknown times, but not to assume the worst. And we are a unique community, and that we really need to work hard to come together. There's clearly a spectrum of opinions that we need to deal with, and I respect everybody's opinions on that spectrum. But we're also a community that should very much come together for the benefit of our kids. And the kids need to see their teachers, and they need to get educated so we don't have those kids at home struggling. We need working families to be at work. And so whatever we can do as a community in order to ensure that those kids get back into school as soon as possible without putting what I feel that, to be honest, the reason I jumped in the car was there seems to be some arbitrary deadlines being set, whether it be end of September, whether it be end of October. It's changing daily and it's changing weekly. So let's not tie our hands with arbitrary deadlines. Let's keep considering this every day, every week, and get the kids back to school as soon as we can. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right. I don't think there's any other member of the public that sped over here. I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
And all in favor, get up and head out. Thank you.
All right, so see you tomorrow.